Good morning, good morning, good morning. If you're watching the recording or if you're joining live, today we're going to be doing day 2 of the 5-day real estate sales and marketing audit, and we're going to jump right in and get started. Let me go ahead and click over to the right screen. I am going to show some stuff in REI SIFT today, so I'm going to go ahead and log in, and then we will jump in and get started. All right, sometimes I will be clicking over. I'm working from home today, so I don't have my extra screen. So it might take me a minute to see comments because I'll have to click over to the right window. So just be patient with me about that. And we're going to jump in and get started. So yesterday we did the 5-day audit workbook, and we audited your business, and we kind of looked at the 4 main components of the business um, that may need to be looked at, or you want to kind of focus in on to figure out which area you need to work on the most. So we talked about marketing, sales and lead management, operations, KPIs, and then today we're going to focus in on one of those areas. So today we're focusing in on marketing, tomorrow sales and lead management, and then Friday we're going to combine KPIs and operations into one day. All right. If you were not live yesterday, you can find the recording in our Facebook community. If you just scroll down a little bit, you'll find the recording and you can watch it. And if you need the workbook, this is the website where you can go to get that workbook. Also, I just want to tell you guys, the reason I'm working from home today is my dog had to have eye surgery on Monday, and so she's here with me recuperating. So if I get a little distracted at any point, it might be just checking on the puppy. So I appreciate your patience with that, but mostly she's just resting, so it should be good. All right. So again, we'll live 10 a.m. every day this week. There's the workbook. Again, what we did yesterday, we talked about that. We do have an offer. If you are signing up as a first-time customer, you can use the code 5-day audit, number 5-day audit, all capitals. I'll share that in a little bit again. If you sign up with that code, you get $25 in free credits. And at the very end, every day, I do talk about an offer we put together for anybody. If you want to stick around to the end, you can hear about that. But we'll cover all of our content about marketing first. So I'm Jessica. I'm a wife and mom of 2 kiddos, 13 and 4, a little bit of an age difference there. I was the customer education specialist at REI SIFT. I still kind of am. I'm also customer success team lead now. So I was a former math teacher of 7 years, and what that's really allowed me to do is become an expert at taking big ideas, big concepts, breaking them down into actionable steps. So whether I'm, explaining algebra to 7th graders, or I'm explaining how to use REI SIFT to users, I find that I'm pretty good at breaking it down and helping you out. If you have any questions as we go, please ask me. It helps me engage with you a little bit more, and also lets me know if you need more information about something that we're talking about. So what is REI SIFT? I'm going to go through the what is REI SIFT, then I'm going to go check our comments. So if you have any comments, type them in, and I will check them in just a minute. So at REI SIFT, using REI SIFT, you can create targeted campaigns with more advanced filtering options than any other competitor. So we'll show some today, but because we have so many filters, you're able to really dial in your data and filter by things like city, state, zip. You can filter by what's been marketed to, what hasn't, what has numbers, what hasn't. So many options. And so you're really able to find the data that you want to market to and make a really targeted campaign in that way. Once they convert to leads, you can manage your prospects, which is before their leads. And then you can also do lead management in REI SIFT. You can create personal workflows for your business processes. And we really find that you can take the luck out of real estate investing. And so we're going to talk about today the smart investor versus the lucky investor. And we want to be the smart investor, not the lucky investor. You can think about us as your central hub. So you can use us to manage your records and your numbers. You track your marketing within REI SIFT. So you connect with, which we'll talk about in a second, you connect with whatever you want to market with. And then you track everything in SIFT so that you're retaining all that insight and clarity in your data. You can use this for sales and lead management, and then also to review your deals, either to reverse engineer success or to avoid pitfalls that made you lose a deal or lose an opportunity. All right, so how do we make this happen? You're going to set up your account and upload your data into REI Sift. You can integrate with our best in class partners for marketing. So that includes, this isn't all of them, but like the ones pictured here are smart call tools, launch control, smartphone, and I think ready mode. And so you integrate with them, and then you're able to track all the marketing that you do in REI Sift. You can also start out if you're doing niche marketing, which we'll talk about today, and you don't want to pay for one of these services. There are people who start out using like Google Voice, but it doesn't quite integrate with REI Sift the same way like smartphone would, where everything gets tracked in your activity log. Once you are integrated with those partners or you're ready, you're going to execute your marketing, and everything is going to be tracked in REI Sift. You're able to filter by the things that have been marketed to you or haven't, and you're retaining all of that clarity in your data. And then out of that, you're going to generate leads and sales, and you can use REI Sift to as your CRM to manage that process as well. All right, so that is a little bit about REI Sift. I'm just going to click over real quick and see if there's been any questions. All right, I see we have a few people live. No questions or comments yet. If you have any, then please type them in. Even if it's a good morning, hello, whatever. And I'm excited you guys are live with me. I do want to mention our affiliate link, and I'll show that in REI Sift as well. So our affiliate program, gets slept on a little bit. I think a lot of people don't, notice. Oh, look, I'm still impersonating somebody from a meeting yesterday. Let me log into my account. Okay. So our affiliate program, you earn for everybody that you refer, you earn 20% commission for like the lifetime of their account. And so you're able to come down here and you can share a link. So you can choose what you want to share. So you could share the audit, which is free. You won't get commission when they sign up for the audit. So if you were to share like, hey, I took this great audit, you should take it too, like in another real estate group you're in, you won't get commission if they sign up for the audit. But if they become users after taking the audit, you would begin earning commission every time that they pay their monthly fee. 20% commission recurring. And so there are many people who pay for their entire membership using affiliate. And so it's definitely something that is worth looking into. And so you can share like a default sign up. You can share the 5-day audit, the Data to Dollars challenge, just the blog, or you can share it right now. Sift Summit would be a good one to share if you're coming to Sift Summit, or if you want to share Sift Summit into other groups. All right. Any questions about the affiliate program? I don't see any, but I'll check again in a moment. All right, let's dig in and get started then. Let's get into the meat and potatoes here. All right, so I'm going to quickly go through these. So today we're talking about marketing. And yesterday when we were doing the 5-day audit, we really discovered that the problems that we're having in our business, often people are like, I need more leads, and they think that's the problem. And while that is like the bigger picture problem, it really comes down to, not having the insight in your data to know what you should be marketing to, or what you already have marketed to, what strategies you've used or haven't used. You lack the clarity to know, what needs to occur or what processes need to be set up. And that equals into a lack of processes. So we can think about our marketing like a conveyor belt. And so what we want to do is have the insight to know what processes or what we should be doing in our marketing, the clarity of knowing, what those processes are, and then being able to set up those processes. And so I like to think about marketing like a conveyor belt, and we'll show that in just a little bit. As we go, I want you guys to keep in mind that I'm going to show just like an example marketing strategy. Not every investor is doing all of these marketing strategies, but you want to be tracking everything that you're doing and retaining that information in your data so that you have that in business intelligence when you want it. Business intelligence, like Okay, right now I'm only cold calling, but if I want to add bulk SMS later down the road, then I have all that business intelligence and clarity in my data to know, okay, all these records I've called, but I've never SMSed, or I've called them, but I've never sent them direct mail. And so when you want to add one of those strategies in, you've retained the knowledge of knowing what you've marketed to in certain ways so that you can add the next strategy in if that's something you want to do in the future. All right. So the first thing is we talk about, lucky versus smart, what's a lucky investor versus a smart investor. And so we're going to kind of talk about strategies that we've seen people implement when they come into REI Sift, or like we've seen YouTube videos of other people recommending. And this kind of goes into that, strategy that we see sometimes of people being like, you call 100,000 people, somebody's going to want to sell their house, right? And so this is kind of what we see when people come in with that mentality. So you're going to buy data, and I'm using just some like generic prices here. So like PropStream, you can get 10,000 records a month for $99. So you're going to buy some data, 10,000 records. You're going to skip trace it. Maybe that costs $1,500. You're going to bulk dial, and this is probably a generous price range here, a cheaper price range, maybe like a single line dialer on a bulk dialer, $99 to dial through all of that data. You're going to dial through, and then you're going to trash it. And then the next month, let's say it takes you a month to dial through these records, you're going to do the same process again where you buy more records, you skip trace it, you bulk dial it, you trash it. And what we're hoping is that, between dialing all these records, we're going to generate leads. I'm going to say that if we dial through these records one time, and I'll show you some of the math that we use to figure this out. Let's say this is a 1 month time frame. We dialed through those records one time. We'd be, it'd be pretty good to get 50 leads. And keep in mind that, this is a 1 month timeline. We get one contract, and let's just say that we're able to close it in that month, because it can happen, although, usually it takes a little bit longer to actually get it, closed. So let's just be generous here. So we spent $1,700. Let's say that we wholesaled this deal and made an assignment fee of $12,000. And so that was a profit of $10,300, which sounds great, right? Like, how many of us, if I said, I'm just checking the comments real quick. If I said you can spend $1,700 a month and make 12,000, most of us would be like, whoop, whoop, like sign me up, right? Like, I'd like to make $10,000 a month. On the surface, it sounds great. And there are some good things that you're doing here, right? You got some correct numbers, you got some leads. Like, there are some good things that have been happening here. But the question is, have we been lucky or have we been smart? And are we getting the maximum result from that data? So real quick, I just want to talk about the numbers so that we can talk about some of the problems that we see with this strategy. When we skip trace records, we usually get numbers back on 90% of them. So usually about 10%, you're just not going to get results back for. So that would mean 9,000 of those records return with numbers on average. Now we see around 3 numbers per record. So some will have 10 numbers and some will have 1, right? But on average, we see about 3. So just general here, we'd get 27,000 numbers back when we skip traced. If we send through the bulk dialer 1 round of calling, on average, we see 2.5% correct numbers on the first dial through. And so if we multiply that, we would get 675 correct numbers on that dial through. So if we go back to this slide, when I dialed through, I got 675 correct numbers just dialing through one time, usually. Only 50 of them were leads. So that's the first problem we're going to talk about. Did you track those other 625 correct numbers? Because we spent $1,700 at least to get those 675 correct numbers. That is really where the value is in our business, is having those correct numbers. A lot of people aren't tracking the not interesteds at all, or if it's DNC, obviously we're not going to call them again, but we should be tracking those not interesteds because we know there's a certain amount of overturn in the market over the time. And so we already spent the money to get those correct numbers. Are we retaining that information? So that's one problem that we often see people who are new to SIFT coming in. They haven't been tracking correct numbers or retaining that information in their data that they paid for. Now, that could generate 50 leads. So the 675 correct numbers, we said 50 leads, because a common correct number to lead ratio that we see, a good one would be 7.5% of the correct numbers became leads. So that'd be 50. And the lead to contract ratio, now I said, okay, we got 50 leads and we got one under contract. After talking to some people like Tyler, he says that 75 to 1, and that is really a good lead to contact ratio in bulk dialing. So we were being generous getting one under contract that first month. Now it sounds great to spend $1,700 and make, we earn 12,000, but we could have to sustain this for 2 months before we close on our first deal and actually get that $12,000. So, with other expenses, $1,700 times 2 plus any other expenses, we're generous to here saying you might spend $4,000 before you close the deal. And sometimes contracts fall through, right? So there are some things that sometimes people don't mention in these strategies. All right. And we want to know some information. What percentage of deals do you actually close? This varies by investor. So once you're under contract, some people are really like, I'm only going to put it under contract if I'm, very confident that this deal is going to close. Some people are like really anxious to get it under contract and maybe aren't as loose or tight with that. So you need to look at your contract to close ratio to make sure that, you're taking that into account when making your plans. Also, we talked about a little bit, are we keeping up with our phone statuses? So do we keep up with our wrong numbers? Why do I want to keep up with my wrong numbers? Well, if I download another list and that person is on that list, that property's on that list again, I don't want to spend time and money sending the wrong numbers back into the dialer if I'm doing a bulk strategy, right? GNCs, I don't want to call them again. Am I keeping up with that? The no answers, the dead numbers. How many people did you actually reach, right? We said 675 correct numbers in that scenario that we were doing. And like I said, are we keeping up with the not interesteds? That is so important. And that's a big hole a lot of people have when they start using SIC. That is like a big one. You've paid for those correct numbers. You should have a follow up for those not interesteds, because chances are in a couple of years, their circumstances could change. They could need to sell or want to sell their property. Lastly, is this scalable? So real quick, I'm going to go back here. We're buying, if this takes us a month to run through here and we're buying 10,000 more records, let's just say that we're in a market with 100,000 properties. How many months can I sustain buying 10,000 records, running through them, buying 10,000 more records? Is it really sustainable in that way? And, we have to kind of take that into account. Is it the smartest way? When I'm trashing that data, is there more that I could have done with it, right? One more thing we want to talk about. Remember we said we skip traced 10,000 records, 9,000 of them came back with numbers. We see that really 50% of those records would have had at least one correct phone number on them. So we really had 4,500 correct numbers hidden in that 27,000 numbers we got. We've only got 675 that answered the phone so far. So there are more, almost 4,000 correct numbers sitting in that data that we haven't gotten the correct number for them yet, even though we have it in that skip trace data. So we should have a plan to move them into another strategy or to do a certain number of attempts to try to find those correct numbers. And that is where the smart investor tactic comes in, which we call sequential marketing. I'm just going to check and see if we have any questions. Doesn't seem like you're a questioning. Oh, Quentin loves it. Thank you, Quentin. All right, so let's talk about that. Make sure you guys, if you have any questions, type them in. Excuse me, got a little bit of dry throat there. All right. So sequential marketing. Now this is like the definition of sequential marketing. This definition is geared towards like somebody that you've already been in contact with, but we're going to kind of rephrase it to fit when we haven't made contact with it. So this says uses several steps to keep in touch with the customer, but we're going to change it to try to reach the customer because we haven't made contact with them yet when we're trying to dial them and find the correct number. So we're using several steps to reach the customer in a planned and sequenced manner over a measured period of time. Regular contact or attempt, in our case, attempt to contact is the key. So we're not just buying the data, dialing through it, putting that file in our computer somewhere and then buying another 10,000 records, right? We have a plan. I'm going to dial through, because we were talking about a bulk strategy, which we're going to talk about the difference here in a second. But if we're doing like a bulk dialer, like a call tools or a ready mode, that's our first strategy. We're going to do 5 attempts on the bulk dialer. Anybody that I haven't made contact with, I'm going to move them into another strategy. Maybe it's SMS, maybe it's direct mail, whatever works for you. And I'm going to do a certain number of attempts there in attempt to reach the homeowner. So we have a plan to move them through a strategy over a period of time and attempt to reach them. The show. Okay. Two types of sequential marketing that we recommend, or that there are, is niche sequential and bulk sequential. So I'm going to talk about bulk sequential first because that's what we were just talking about in that example. Bulk sequential marketing focuses on systematically targeting a larger group of prospects using one marketing method at a time. Did I not put the definition? Maybe it's on tomorrow. So when you see the word prospects, this is like a vocab thing that we see a lot. A lot of times people are like, I got to upload my leads into REI Sift. And sometimes it's genuinely leads. Sometimes it's prospects or data. So a lot of times people are like, I buy my leads from PropStream. We call those prospects or prospective leads, right? Those are the people that you haven't made contact with yet that you're hoping will be a lead. A lead is somebody who you've gotten on the phone, or they've called you after direct mail, or you've knocked on their door and they've said, yes, I want to sell my property, right? So when you see the word prospects, these are the people we're trying to reach to see if they want to sell their home. So when we do bulk sequential, it's a larger group of prospects using one marketing method at a time. So you're using a bulk tool like call tools, ready mode, smarter contact for texting, whatever one of those bigger platforms are that you're going to, we'll use bulk dialing for an example, where it's going to dial through those numbers for us. When they answer, we're talking to them on that dialer. You're going to do one marketing method at a time. So you're going to do like 5 attempts on the bulk dialer, but you should have a plan for that. I'm going to have a certain number of attempts on the bulk dialer. Then maybe I'm going to do SMS, a certain number of attempts. Then maybe I'm going to do direct mail, certain number of attempts. So you have a plan, and I'll show a graphic of that in a second. Niche sequential marketing is usually a smaller number of prospects. So there's kind of 2 candidates for the smaller number of prospects that we often see. One is what we call first to market. So this is like usually, a vexation that you want to focus on. So maybe you really target probate data and you're an expert at helping homeowners get through the probate process and purchasing their properties. And so you target that. And so you pull the new probate data as soon as it comes out, daily or weekly, right? And you're going to upload it into Sift. And so you have a smaller number that you're targeting that day because you're pulling it frequently. And so you're going to do niche sequential. And you're using many marketing methods simultaneously. So you're using usually a click to call, like we are integrated with AirCall or smartphone, and you're going to click to call. If they don't answer and the voicemail picks up, you leave a voicemail. If it's a mobile number, you're going to go ahead and send a text right then. You can do that with smartphone, and then you move to the next number, right? It's like a manual thing. You either do it with that first to market like I talked about, or sometimes people build it in after bulk sequential. So they do a certain number of dials on the bulk dialer on a larger data set, get as many correct numbers as they can from that. And then the records they didn't get correct numbers for, they move into a niche sequential. So you want to use a smaller group of records, smaller number of prospects, and you're doing many marketing methods simultaneously. You might have, if you've been part of our community, we heard us call this sensei flow. We're kind of rebranding that a little bit, and we're calling it niche sequential and bulk sequential, which are both types of the sensei flow. Sensei flow being like the sensei way of marketing. So we have the niche way and the bulk way, but they're both sensei flows. All right. You also hear people call it first to market a lot. If you see that in the community, they're usually talking about niche sequential. Now, of the two types, because we call this the sensei flow, and so many people were really like, talking about it, it is excellent way of doing it, niche sequential marketing. A lot of people kind of felt like we really advocate this one over that one. That's not quite the case. We think both are great ways of marketing. There's kind of a balance here. Niche sequential marketing takes more time because you're manually dialing, waiting for it to ring, manually sending the text, all those things. Bulk sequential marketing is quicker. However, niche sequential marketing is a little more affordable. Bulk sequential marketing is usually a little more expensive. So like there's this balance here of, especially when first starting out, do you have more time or do you have more money? And finding the strategy that works best for you. Most people, as they grow, incorporate both of these in some fashion. They're doing bulk sequential on larger data sets to get as many correct numbers as possible. They're doing niche sequential on the things that they want to be first to market on. And so there's a place for both of these or neither. There are people who use REI Sift exclusively for direct mail. So, there's not like a right way or like a right strategy or wrong strategy when it comes to niche or bulk. The truth is that the sequential part is the part that needs to happen. Tracking everything, having a plan, moving it through a process is really what matters. And the strategy that works best for you is the strategy that works best for you. That said, all right, let me just see. Okay, I'm back. Hopefully I wasn't lagged out for too long there. All right, so let's look at like a little graphic of both. So here's a graphic of niche sequential. So you're going to get records that are ready to market. So that means you're going to skip trace them first. And once they have numbers, they are ready to market. And you're going to do a certain number of attempts. So we're going to say 3. And attempt 1, you're going to call, leave a voicemail if you can, send a text message if you can. Now, they're only moving down this funnel if you have not made contact with the homeowner. Because if you've made contact with the homeowner, they are moving out of this funnel into their own follow-up. So if you make contact with the correct homeowner, one of 3 things is going to happen. They're going to say like, F off and don't ever call me again. Or maybe they say it nicely, right? But usually it's not in my experience, right? So that would be a DNC. We're not going to call them anymore. We mark them as DNC and REI Sift. I can show that in a minute. And I'm not going to call them anymore. Or they're going to say, I'm not interested. Okay. We're going to say something like, okay, I totally understand. Is it okay if I, reach back out in 6 months and just see how things are going? Or like, you say something like that, like, so that they know you're going to follow up with them, right? You move them into their own follow-up because we know there'll be a certain amount of overturn in the market and their circumstances may change. All right. So that's outcome number 2. Outcome number 3, if we get the correct number, is the one that we're all hoping for. They say, yes, I'm interested in selling my property. And we call that a lead, a new lead, despite timeline. We'll talk about tomorrow timeline and how we gauge lead temperature. But for right now, a new lead is anybody who says they want to sell their property. So if that happens, if we get a correct number, they move going to have a smaller group as you go down. You're going to be marking some number. Are those numbers is faster because we're only going to continue to call the ones that didn't answer. We're not going to call the dead ones again. We're not going to call the wrong ones again. We're not going to call the DNC ones again, right? So each attempt has fewer records as you go down the funnel. We do a certain number of attempts here. Usually after this, they would move into something like direct mail or deep prospecting. If you don't know what deep prospecting is, that's when you are doing like a deep dive on the property. You're contacting like relatives, you're looking them up on True People Search, you're looking them up on Facebook, you're messaging them on Facebook. So you're doing like that deeper dive. That is the process that takes the most time. So generally you do that after some marketing or on records that you, when you skip trace, you didn't get numbers for. All right, so that is niche sequential, kind of what it would look like. Here's just some of our feedback on what people say about niche sequential, or sometimes they call it sensei flow or first to market. It has made a really big difference in a lot of people's business. And so we see, really positive feedback on implementing that strategy. All right, I want to show kind of what niche sequential can look like inside REI Sift. I'm just going to check the comments here, and I'm just going to show a little bit of what it could look like in REI Sift. So this is my REI Sift account. First of all, you're going to skip trace the records. So if we go into, sorry, my filters, I have some saved, so you can save filters. And if I go into my prep folder, I have this never skipped. So these are my records that have never been skip traced. And I can, I'm actually going to use a different one for this purpose. This isn't quite how I teach people to set it up anymore. I need to come in here and update my account. But here's some records that I've never skip traced. I'm going to select a certain number of them. So 10, I'll just to show an example. I can skip trace them in REI Sift, or I can download them and skip trace them somewhere else. If you prefer another skip tracer, we still recommend that you upload them into REI Sift first, because when you get a new list, there is a chance that there are some records in there that you already have in your REI Sift account and that you may have already had numbers for